Welcome back, everyone, to the Pitre podcast. Setup is a little bit different. I'm gonna be leaning to the left a little bit to get comfy. I apologize for no episode last week. So fun update. I have uploaded all of the podcast episodes to YouTube. So if you want to watch me visually be sexy as fuck on camera, you can do so there, right? So you can watch all the existing episodes on YouTube. Subscribe, bro. Fucking watch all of them, analyze it, do whatever you like. So that takes forever, right? That literally, it takes hours in order to upload anything to YouTube. It's so freaking annoying. Like a 30-minute podcast episode would take, I'm not shitting you, like 14 hours. So and it had 21 episodes of uploads. It was a lot. It was a lot for your boy, man. But we finally got it done. So now I'm going to make clips. I'm going to make clips of those individual episodes on like certain points or whatever. And I'm going to upload that to Instagram. I'm going to create a whole separate Instagram just for the Pitre podcast. I'm going to post it on YouTube. So we're going to have YouTube shorts, YouTube clips. I'm going to post it on TikTok. So that's what I'm currently working on. It's easy, don't get me wrong, because I utilize Premiere Pro, so it's not that hard. It's actually a lot simpler than it sounds, but it's just tedious. Like, I have to go through the entire podcast episode, watch it. I hate listening to my own voice. Anyone who has to listen to their own voice, at first you just hate it. Eventually you get used to it, but I just hate it. I'm not going to lie. So I have to go through every single podcast episode, create clips, and then, upload it and all that shit. So that's what I'm currently doing right now. That's why there was no episode last week, and I'm sorry about that. But for the topic for this week, this sounds really morbid, but when it happened, I was really excited to talk about it. It's really sad. Don't get me wrong. It's not anything that's like, a positive whatsoever. I'm wearing a hat because my fucking hair is a mess and you get a haircut. But it's not anything that's good. It's very sad. But when it happened, I was super excited to talk about it. It's been about a week and a half to 2 weeks. I wanted to wait a little bit before talking about it to see if any new details would arise from it. But it seems like everything is currently under wraps, unfortunately. But this episode, we're going to be talking about the Blackstone and CEO murder or death. Don't fucking demonetize me, YouTube. So basically, we're going to be talking about that, right? And if you have been living under a rock, New York City, what's going on, bro? Like, I move out of New York City, and you got CEOs getting popped. You have fucking helicopters falling out of the sky. Like, dude, is New York City good? Are you good, bro? Like, what the fuck is going on, man? Like, all that shit's happened in Manhattan, too. I lived in Queens, so nothing was happening in my neck of the woods, per se. But, yeah, New York City is just bugging out lately. It's fucking insane. Anyway, man, we're not here to talk about New York City. We're here to talk about the Blackstone CEO murder. So, essentially what happened was the news is labeling her as an executive, but she is the CEO of their real estate division. So Blackstone is a hedge fund corporation or organization, essentially. Hedge funds, they just buy a lot of shit. They're just financial institutions that like buy a lot of shit and have their hands on a lot of little different pots, essentially. And basically you invest into the hedge fund, so you put your money in there, and basically they diversify your money, your income, essentially. So that's what they do in a nutshell. And like the most simplest terms possible is what they do. So she was in charge of their real estate division. They have a whole division dedicated to buying real estate. She was in charge of that division. She was in charge of that division for the last couple years, and she was unfortunately schmirked. I'm going to say schmirked instead of, the other word, because I don't want to get demonetized. I don't know the rules and regulations of YouTube. I'm just starting this journey. So, yeah, she got smirked, essentially. And there's just a lot there to unpack, and I think most of it is to unpack regarding the media and how the media has been handling that entire situation so far. But let me dive into it. I have a lot of notes here, so let me unlock my fucking phone and tell you what happened. Okay, so a gunman opened fire inside a high-rise corporate building in the heart of Manhattan, basically, so around Midtown. And this happened, I forgot the exact day. I know it happened specifically on a Monday. I want to say it's like 2 weeks ago at this point. So the person killed a New York City police officer, fortunately, and a Blackstone, they're saying executive, but this is the CEO of their real estate division. I'm going to get into why that's important and why that's weird in a little bit. So officials say the suspect shooter acted alone and died from a self-inflicted gun wound. So the deadly gunfire, which was first reported around 6:30 p.m., was treated as an active shooting, prompting warning and office evacuations, with lines of people seen leaving the building with their hands above their heads. So the gunman's motive has not been disclosed. Officials familiar with the investigation has stated that, but however, the suspect left a note that mentions a possible cause of mental illness. Investigators are looking into whether that is a reason he targeted the Park Avenue building. And this building has, with any building in Manhattan, there's multiple different companies within a building. Like, I've worked in a building where it's like 20 different companies and there's like a different company each floor. That's just Manhattan. That's just corporate America for you. So this building in particular had the Blackstone office, and they also had the NFL headquarters as well. So I'm going to get into the weird part about the shooting. So at first they were saying the shooter, I'm going to get into the shooter, his background, who he is. But ethnically, they were saying he's Arab. The guy's not Arab. Like, the guy clearly doesn't look Arab. The guy looks like Blasian. He looks like a mix between someone black and then someone Asian, Like, he's clearly not an Arab individual. And people always say, how do you know for a fact? Listen, depending on where you're from, your ethnic ties, there's traits, facial traits that are similar across those people, those individuals. Now, of course, people are diverse. So, of course, you're some across people that can be ethnically one thing, even though technically they don't really look like it. Historically, from the historical, typical facial features that we see within that region or that ethnic group. But this guy's not like Arab whatsoever. And he wasn't Arab. It was disclosed later on that he wasn't Arab. So why they were saying that he was Arab to begin with was really, really weird. Like, why are we making those assumptions here? Like, we had no basis off this. But not only that, what I also found weird was that, yes, there's multiple companies within that building, right? Just that's a structure of Manhattan. The entire narrative for the mainstream media was NFL office. He went into the NFL headquarters and started shooting. He specifically went there. He specifically went to target there. One, we had no inclination what his motives were. It says it right there. We don't know what he was trying to do. He left a note. The note has not been disclosed to the public yet. We don't know what, and the guy died from a self-inflicted gun wound. We don't know his motives. We don't know why the fuck he did this. But one thing is for certain. Why are you saying that is the NFL office where there's no inclination that's stating that he was targeting the NFL office? It didn't make any sense. Like, he wasn't even on the same floor as the NFL office. He was on the floor and shot executives or people or staff working in the Blackstone office. So why is it by default everyone was saying the NFL office instead of truly what he was targeting, which seems to be, from the case of evidence that are put in front of us, the Blackstone office? So it was one thing that I found extremely weird off the jump. Like, they're saying he targeted the NFL office. No one from the NFL office died. It was like he clearly wasn't targeting that office, and no one in that office was schmirked, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but you know what I mean. So it just didn't make sense, and I found it extremely fishy. This whole thing has been extremely fishy, and it feels like not necessarily a cover-up, but they're trying to diverge the truth, if you will. So he targeted specifically the Blackstone office, as it seems, and he shot the CEO of their real estate division. Going into who the CEO was, who was Shane Devin Tamora. So, oh no, I'm bugging. That is the gunman. So I'm jumping the boat here. We're going to get into the woman who was shot, but let's go into the shooter. So the guy in question, or suspect in question, was identified as Shane Devin Tamora, 27 years old. Two officials familiar with the matter said that in a note that suspected wonders about CTE as being a possible cause for mental illness. He played a lot of high school growing up, and CTE is big within the football community. So, and I'm talking about American football, not soccer. So, for football, you're literally running headfirst into each other. No exaggeration. Like, you're dipping your head and you're just fucking running into each other with helmets. But listen, the human body is not designed to do that. It's not designed to take those kind of impacts time after time after time again. And again, they're not just taking these fucking bodily collisions just on the field. They're doing this in practice as well. So the human body, I'm trying to think of that dinosaur that had like the shit on their head, that had like the hard, like their skulls like super hard, and they were used as they used their domes as battering rams. Whatever that dinosaur is, we're not that. We're not built for that. We're not built for those collisions. So repeated trauma to the head is going to lead to CTE. I forgot, it's cognitive something, whatever. But basically, like, you're fucking up your brain. And people with CTE often have, like, heightened memory loss, hyper aggressive behavior. A lot of the times, like, their personality just outright switches. They're illogical. Their impulse control is at an all-time low. So those are like some of the symptoms that are associated with CTE. So they're saying that CTE could have caused him mass murdering people, essentially. So Caleb Clark, who was a former classmate at the high school football team that Tamura attended, said Tamura was the biggest goofball in the world, just a ton of energy, class clown. Two played together in California until Tamura transferred to Santa Clara High School and Granada Hills High School in 2015, just before the senior year. So Clark said that in recent years, he had Tamura kept up only through social media, and where Tamura shared that he had been working in a casino in Las Vegas. So Clark didn't recall Tamura ever being a troublemaker in school. Basically, you would have never thought that he was like the violent type or would do anything like this. That's what Clark said. So, he could make a joke about people, but that was typically, Shane was just a jokester. Everything he said was just a joke. He had a ton of energy. He added that it seemed that Tamura was destined for greatness as an athlete. I feel like he definitely it was on a table for him. I don't think he walked around to be like, oh, I have an NFL games one day. I think it was more like everybody just telling him how great he was and how special he was, essentially. So apparently this guy had a lot going for him. He was clearly a talented athlete in case of football, and he just seemed like a really lighthearted, kind of like joking around, jockey guy, the stereotypical jock just fucking around, having fun, essentially. So let's get to the person that was unfortunately schmirked. So Leslie Partner, she was a 43-year-old Blackstone Group executive, CEO of the real estate division, who led the firm's real estate investment trust business, was among those killed in the mass shooting. And I have the address here, but I'm not going to name the address. It's irrelevant. So the partner was an 11-year veteran at the asset management company, where she served as a global head of its core real estate plus team, and the CEO of Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust, a $53 billion market. So that was marketed to an individual investor. So it's a big portion of the real estate, of the asset management group. So again, Blackstone has its hands on a lot of different things. I think the association with Blackstone in the media online is that of negativity, and they did that from their own volition. If you were to investigate Blackstone, its controversy as a whole, they do a lot of shady shit. I can just get into all the different shady shit, but I'm not going to just list it out. It would just be too long. But listen, here's the thing, right? Every very large corporation like Blackstone do shady shit. They all do shady shit, That's not something that's unique to Blackstone. They all do this. I think most corporations do shady shit in terms of taxes and tax loopholes and trying to evade taxes. But Blackstone kind of went beyond that. And if you were to just do a quick Google search of the controversies that Blackstone currently has, you would start to list them. I'm going to list a few of them that are specific to the real estate industry and that real estate division that she was in charge of. But as a whole, they're not well liked online or just by the media. So getting into what I found really weird about why they were labeling her an executive and not a CEO, I think the main thing was, she's anyone who is a CEO, CMO, CFO, so Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Financial Officer, all those people are technically labeled as C-suite in like corporate terms, basically. So they're C-suite. They're like the highest level that any company can have, essentially. Like everyone reports to C-suite. C-suite at the end of the day, they're executive decision makers. Basically, whatever they say goes within the company. Of course, you have like the board directors who are above C-suite, who have power over C-suite to a degree, but C-suite basically runs the show in any company, right? I worked extensively with C-suite in my working career. I've done I'm not kidding you, hundreds of presentations to C-suite executives, CEOs, CMOs, CFOs for different organizations, right? Multiple different organizations that varies in size. So I'm very familiar with these people, how they act, how they carry themselves, what's important to them, their thought process. Like, I'm very familiar with it. And one thing that is common across the board is that anyone in C-suite, especially a CEO, they care about the position. They care about the label. The label of C-suite, the label of a CEO is more important than the pay. And there has been multiple studies that have proven this, that if you ask a regular person, like, what do you care more? Getting promoted to a higher position with a nice sounding title or getting a raise? A lot of people are going to choose the position with a nice sounding title because of the prestige. It's the prestige of it. It's you get to show off, whether to your friends or on LinkedIn, that I'm the CEO of this or I'm the VP of this. Like, it's the prestige of the role and that it carries, right? So these C-suites, excuse me, what the fuck is English? These C-suites executives, their title is extremely important to them. It's of the utmost importance to them. If you were to just like mess up their title, they would have a shit fit. They would literally correct you right away. Like, if you were to call them the VP of marketing and not the CMO, they would be like, yo, I'm not the VP of marketing, I am the CMO. Like, they would, dude, they don't give a fuck. Like, they would correct you in an instant. You know, they have to let you know, I'm not a VP, I'm a C-suite, essentially. So the fact that they're labeling her as an executive rather than her actual title, which is the CEO of the real estate division, I found extremely weird. Like, not to make a joke of it, but if she could see that they were calling her an executive, not a CEO, she would probably have a shit fit. She'd be like, what the fuck? Like, I'm more than an executive. I'm a CEO. Like, you know, get the freaking story straight. So these people care about the position. They care about the titles. That's corporate America for you. And especially these larger corporations, these prestigious corporations like Blackstone, they care about this shit. Like, it's very important. So the fact that they're trying to hide her actual title right away gave me a red flag. That is extremely weird. Yes, technically, she is an executive of the organization. Yes, the organization had multiple different branches, and they're CEOs of those different branches. They report to like a higher CEO, so like fucking the CEOs essentially. But she was still the CEO of that division. They're labeling her position wrong, and I think they're hiding it on purpose. I think they're hiding it on purpose for the obvious reasons that they don't want Luigi to basically rub off the whole Luigi United Healthcare situation, the murder of that CEO, the smirking of that CEO. They don't want that to rub off to the general public. They don't want people to start rebelling in that way. They want to control as much as possible. You know, they don't want people waking up and being, oh, let's just start murdering CEOs. Like, if they're not going to change anything, if they're going to keep manipulating us and fucking us over, we're going to take you out, essentially. They don't want that. They don't want that whatsoever. So I think they're actively trying to hide her position so that people don't think, oh, another CEO death. And it would kind of inspire another person to murder another CEO. And that would just, you know, create a trickle-down effect. And, you know, it would eventually break the dam and CEOs would be getting smirked left and right across the country, which, you know, I'm not an advocate of murder, but hey, man, if that's the only thing that's going to change America, then it is what it is. I'm not going to cry about it. But yeah, that's why I found it extremely sus in that they're not labeling her true position. Yes, if you do a quick Google search and you would like read through the articles, you can find her that she was basically the CEO of their real estate division. But yeah, that's something that's very, very sus, and I think they're trying to hide that fact as much as they can for a clear and obvious reason. So that's not to say that the guy murked her specifically for that reason. Again, we don't know why he did it. We'll never know why he did it, you know? It's not like Luigi who had a manifesto and that kind of stuff. Like, we don't know why this guy did any of this shit. He just did it and offed himself afterwards. So there's no, you know, we can make assumptions at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, we're never going to know, unfortunately. But yeah, that's something that really was a cause for concern for me, and something that if these instances start happening, please do your research. And I'm happy that people online were stating, like, right off the bat, they're like, yo, she ain't an executive, this is what her real title is. Like, no one was buying, everyone was like, yo, you're trying to cover this up, this is what the real title is. And they kind of, blasted that to the world, or to discourse online, which I'm happy over. So let's get into the reason as to why she might have been possibly schmirked. So, as I said beforehand, there was a lot of things that Blackstone does that a lot of people are opposed to or are controversial, but especially from the real estate division, the one thing that they've, and this has occurred definitely after the pandemic over the past couple of years, and that there's accusations of them contributing to the housing crisis, right? So critics, including the UN advisor, have blamed Blackstone for exacerbating the global housing crisis by raising rents and reducing maintenance. So basically what they're doing is, all right, so I'm going to read all of it first, and then I'll give my 2 cents into it. So that was one thing that is cause for concern. So concerns about institutional buyers' influence. So the role of the institutional buyer, like Bright, so basically like corporations going in and buying these houses, in the housing market, particularly increasing competition for single family homes, potentially driving up prices, and has been a major point of contention. Legislators in several U.S. states have been pursued measures to curb their presence. So basically they're going in there and fucking buying all the homes, right? So localized impacts. So why Blackstone claims to own less than 1% of the total U.S. rental housing market, its acquisitions are concentrated in specific areas. So even though it may not sound like a lot, it's only 1%. 1% of every single house in America is a lot. That is a lot of homes, and especially if they're buying in just one market, in one city, etc. Like you're buying that entire area. So 1% of total U.S. rental housing market, its acquisitions are concentrated in specific areas, leading to localized concerns about their impact on particular housing markets. And last but not least, allegations of rent hikes and reduced maintenance. So beyond the current concerns, Blackstone has faced allegations of raising rents and neglecting property maintenance in some of its rental properties in the past, both in the U.S. and abroad. These past controversies contribute to the scrutiny that it faces today. So as we unpack that there, basically Blackstone is going in and is buying American homes, right? They're buying primarily single family homes. So they're going into these markets, they're buying single family homes by the droves. So basically they want to be America's landlord. They want to own all of, or as much as they can, own as much single family homes as possible, so that people would have to rent to them and that they can collect rent payments. Essentially, it's just like, when it comes to, and it's hard to explain it for someone who is not American, but one of the biggest avenues to creating wealth in America is through home ownership, right? Is through investing in real estate. I think across the board, it's like, if you want to become wealthy in America, technically the easiest way would be through real estate, I believe. I think I saw studies regarding that. Like, it's technically the easiest way to develop wealth in America, as far as like all the other avenues that you can possibly generate wealth in America. So it's a big way to develop wealth, right? And not only that, new development is hard to come by in America because, of course, you have to get zoning rights, you have to get approved. There's like a lot of basically restrictions in order to where you can build a home, how you can build a home, and all that shit, basically. So it's not easy to build homes necessarily in America. And especially because, one, space issue as well. So there's only so many homes you can possibly build. So it's a finite resource, just like how gas is a finite resource or oil is a finite resource. Like, there's only so much of it. The same thing as space. There's only so much homes you can possibly build until you run out of space. You can't build homes anymore. So they're trying to buy as much single family homes as possible to become America's landlord, so that they can have that passive rental income come into Blackstone Asset Management Group, essentially. And the reason, and some people may view that as it's not that big of a deal. Like, they're, if you want a home, go buy a home before they do. Or some people don't want to own a home. Some people just want to rent a home. And I understand that sentiment, but I think that sentiment is wrong, because there's a difference between you having the ability to buy a home but instead you just want to rent, versus you completely not having the ability to buy a home. So you can only rent. Renting is your only option. It's the difference between having the ability to buy but you don't want to buy versus renting is your only option. What I mean by that is, if you just don't want to buy a home, you want to rent, that's your decision. You later on have the decision to buy a home. If you don't want to continue paying to a landlord and you just want to own the property yourself and pay down a mortgage, have your rent payments be overall decreased, because the more you pay off the mortgage, the more your rent payments get decreased. And of course, since you own the home, you can do things to the home that naturally when you're renting, you technically can't do. Or if you do when you're renting, you have to basically make all those changes back by the time you're done renting that property. So there's advantages to buying a home. Of course, generational wealth as well. If you pay off your home in total, your rent payments go all the way down. And of course, if you're still working, then a lot of money that comes out of people's checks nowadays, and when I say at least, well, people are saying average 30 to 50% of people's literal income is going straight into their rent. So if you own a home and you're starting to pay that down, you're basically getting that 30 to 50% back, essentially. So all that money you would have been paying for rent is now you're pocketing it. Of course, there's going to be expenses when you own a home. So for instance, the roofing needs to get redone, or like fucking the water heater breaks, or general maintenance that comes with owning a home, which people kind of exacerbate in my personal opinion, as a reason as to not buy a home. But there's perks to buying a home. That's what I'm trying to say. So not having the ability to buy a home whatsoever because someone or a company owns every single family home in America is not good. Look at the boomer generation. The boomer generation has so much wealth primarily through real estate. A lot of boomers are house rich. House rich being that you bought your house for extremely cheap, essentially. And then, of course, real estate is one of the only appreciating assets for the most part. It's not going to appreciate every single time. It also depends on how well you maintain the home. Like the area that the home is in, of course, is a big indicator of real estate price. But real estate historically is one of the best appreciating assets. So homes that cost $100,000 in 1960 oftentimes right now cost $500 to $600 due to inflation and multiple different factors. So a lot of boomers are house rich. They have money within their homes. So their homes are worth $600,000. They personally don't have $600,000. Or if they sell their home, they would have that. So they have a $600,000 asset essentially, right? So homes are a big way to have generational wealth. Not only that, it's people pass down their homes. So oftentimes, specifically in America, I'm stuttering here, but specifically in America, this is not really done through other parts of the world as I came to research, but Americans pass down their homes, right? They always pass down their homes. So someone owns a home, your family member owns a home, your grandma, whatever, typically they're going to pass it down to your parents. If your parents don't own a home already, now they have a home. Now they have an asset of their own. Now they don't have to pay these mortgage rates and that kind of shit. Like everything's already paid off on the home. So it's a way to build wealth or to get out of poverty, right? So that's why real estate is so important in America, just like a real estate course 101 essentially. So if you have a company that's buying all the real estate, that's taking that ability away from the people. So you're not allowing people to build that generational wealth. You're basically still taking 30 to 50% of this person's paycheck every single month. And not only that, as we can see in the article there, in the research that I've done, they do a terrible job. Blackstone real estate, or these real estate groups, these real estate buying asset management groups, essentially, they do a terrible job of maintaining the home. So you're paying. One of the good things about renting a home, of course, is that you're not necessarily paying for maintenance. Maintenance is going to come out of the landlord's pocket, but they're doing a terrible job of maintaining the property. So I'm paying you basically 30 to 50% of my income, and you're doing a shitty job of doing general maintenance on the property, which these asset management groups, that's what they're going to do. They don't give a shit. When you have fucking 100,000 homes at your disposal within your portfolio, you don't really care for maintenance that much. You're not trying to maintain a home as much as possible. Rather than if it's like a small investor who has maybe like 10 to 50 homes, that guy is going to care about his properties as much as possible. He's going to try to maintain his properties as much as possible. Why? Because if he doesn't maintain this property, then it's going to be hard renting it out later, or he's going to have to pay additional costs to get it up to standards or up to speed or up to like market value later. So it's better for him to just maintain and put that money into it rather than just letting it go to shit, which apparently that's what Blackstone is doing for the real estate division for the existing properties that they already own. So, and again, they say they own less than 1%. Less than 1% of homes is still a lot of homes, especially if it's concentrated in just like specific markets. Imagine if they bought 1% of the homes, but almost all of that is in the city of Cincinnati. I just threw Cincinnati as an example. That's going to be a lot of homes that are taken in Cincinnati. You know, if you live in Cincinnati, you're trying to buy a home, it's going to be impossible for you to buy a home because you have a fucking real estate group that owns everything. And then, of course, since they're shitty landlords, you don't want to rent from those people. They're not going to maintain anything. So it doesn't benefit the consumer whatsoever. And that was the biggest controversy regarding Blackstone, their real estate group, how it's being handled. And, of course, as we said here, people are lobbying like they're the Congress, their senators, people in the government to like put laws and regulations regarding this, and I think few states have started to do so. But again, like these people in government are bought out. You don't think Blackstone spends millions of dollars lobbying our politicians? Of course they do. So not every state is going to implement those rules. And again, this is a state by state case, so this is not going to go federally. This is basically, they're going to let the states decide. And some states are going to, try to crack down on it. Some states are just not going to crack down on it whatsoever and going to let these corporations do whatever they want, which they have been doing for decades about now. So that was the biggest controversy from Blackstone, their real estate group. And it's a reason, or it's probably the reason that the CEO of the real estate group was unfortunately probably smirked by this guy. They seen that this is bullshit. This shouldn't be allowed, and we're gonna take you out essentially. And that's what he did. Again, we don't know. I'm just speculating that. That's what everyone online is speculating too. Is not just me. Literally, a whole discourse online saying that as well. But listen, man, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna end with this too. And I said this in the earlier episode. I think in the United Healthcare CEO episode, right? When people feel trapped, when people feel that their government doesn't care about them, or their government is actively doing things that are not within their best interest, or the government doesn't do anything within their best interest, and they're letting corporations, people, or billionaires, or whatever, basically run wild and do whatever the fuck they want, just fucking over the common folk within that country time after time after time again. Once people feel that, they rebel. They naturally rebel, and they turn to anarchy. Look at every single country ever throughout human history. Once it gets to the point where the ruling class is basically just hoarding wealth, hoarding power, and not trying to help the common folk or better the common folks' lives whatsoever, or just like increasing taxes and wherever the case may be, just basically the country just became a shit show for the ruling class. Anarchy occurred. The common people said, yo, fuck that. We're not listening to you guys anymore. We're going to rebel. And when the people of the country all rebel, you're fucked. Look at every single nation, every single country throughout history, right? France is a good example. Look at the French Revolution. It was a big wealth disparity. People said, yo, we're done. You guys have too much power, too much money. We're fucking living in poverty. We're taking you out. France is one of the strongest nations in the world at that time. They couldn't do anything. I said this beforehand, the power is always in the people, man. The power is in the people. The people who are in positions of power, they have an illusion of power. They have power because the people has granted you that power. If the people want to take away that power, they will take away that power. That's how it is. Like in America has more guns than people. That's why they're trying to take away your guns, not to get conspiratorial there, but like America has more guns than people. If the people rise up and say, yo, we're not doing this anymore, we want something new, and all of you need to fucking get out, there's nothing that the government can do about it. Literally, you can't fight an entire nation of people. especially when your troops are comprised of that same people who probably have those same values. So again, look at every country throughout history, man. Look at Rome. Rome was everyone glorifies Rome and how amazing it was and how advanced it was for its time and all this stuff. It eventually fell. Why? For these reasons. Every country eventually falls for these reasons in some way, shape, or form. Every country gets to this point where, I forgot who said this. Someone said that countries don't die by murder, they die by suicide. So basically they kill themselves from within. And a big reason as to that is exactly what I just said. The wealthy, the elites, they hoard too much power, hoard too much wealth, stop solving or helping the issues of the common folk, and the common folk eventually rebel, right? In this case, we're the common folk. We're the fucking normies. And I said this beforehand, if things don't change for this country for the better, if people don't feel that their elected officials are actually working on their behalf, you're going to see more of this. And I said that a couple months ago for United Healthcare CEO murder. Now a CEO is just murdered. Now people are catching on. You're eventually going to see more of this, man. Until things start changing for the better, you're going to see this. That's what it is, And I'm not necessarily advocating for it. I don't want it to happen. I don't want senseless murder to occur, Because some people could argue she's just doing her job. I call that bullshit. I'm not going to lie. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. But, you're a grown woman. You know that. Same thing with the United Healthcare guy. But, again, I'm not advocating for senseless murder. What I am saying is that if things don't change, this is just a natural progression of society. This is what society does. Society goes into anarchy. There's nothing you can do to stop that. You can try to do surveillance, everything you want. That's exactly what's going to happen. So, again, not advocating for it. I don't want it to happen because, through anarchy, you can get a regime or a new system of governance that was worse than the one before, which will be going backwards. And often cases, that's exactly what happens. Through anarchy, it doesn't happen all the time where, a new governance is better than the last one, A lot of times it moves into dictatorship or fucking communism, wherever the case may be, which I don't want to live through. But what I am saying is that things clearly need to change in this country. Our elected officials need to start doing their fucking jobs and start working on behalf of the people, not working on behalf of corporations and foreign nations, And people are seeing it with the current, presidential administration with Donald Trump. Donald Trump made all these promises. He's going to do this, do that, do this, do that. Fucking faltered on everything, literally. He's just shown that he's part of the problem, essentially. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. I think we're going to see a lot more of this as time moves on. And I think at the end of the day, it's the corporation's fault. It's sad that she died. I'm not going to lie. I don't feel bad for you because look at what you're doing. It is what it is. You kind of asked for it at the end of the day. You're going to see more of this, and they're going to try to hide this as much as possible. They're going to try to hide these tiles as much as possible. But listen, man, you made your bed. You got to lay in it. And if things don't get fixed soon, the people are going to fucking go into anarchy. And I don't want that. I don't want to fucking live in a place in a country where I'm fucking scared because the people are rebelling, I don't want to deal with that shit. But that's a natural progression of society when we get to this point. And that's what I want to end it with. But thank you guys for tuning to this episode. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm not going to lie to you. I enjoy these kind of topics. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.